Hey everyone, thank you so much for taking some of your valuable time to check out this video. If you end up liking it, I'd be super grateful if you hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I'd love it if you would join me here. And what would be super amazing is if you hit that notifications bell. That makes it much more likely that this video will be seen by more people. And of course, please share if you know anyone that would appreciate this video. I have a promotion going on currently, and if you'd like to learn more about it, just check out my website at matthewstelzner.com. And if you're not already on my mailing list, please scroll down the front page and sign up in the mailing list box that you'll find there. And so without further delay, please enjoy this video on Marianne Williamson's chart, natal chart, and transits, part 1. Hey everyone, Matthew Stelzner here, and I would like to explore the natal chart and what are called the transits of U.S. presidential candidate and amazing human being, Marianne Williamson, for 2020. I might as well just start right out of the gate saying this astrologer right here endorses this amazing, powerful, caring woman, Marianne. And I have to assume that it's conceivable that she might see this at some point, and so let me speak directly to Marianne. I intend to look at your chart in a way that is kind and loving, like you. And I'm trying to be in the voice of my higher self and in contact with your higher self. And we're going to look at your chart in transits and try to receive some loving messages of support and guidance in a way for you, but in a larger sense, my intention is to find a way to explore your chart in transits that is a celebration of you and a full endorsement of your candidacy, because that's what I feel. There's other amazing people, but I love having you in the conversation. I love the way you are interacting with the major media. I love how you engage with social media. I think you're classy. I like what you write. I like who you are. I like your track record, how you have devoted your entire life to service to other human beings, service to the foundational principles of the United States of America, a knowledge of the dark history of this amazing country, acknowledgement of it, and a willingness to make amends and help other people to make amends for the darkness in our history and the darkness of our current moment. And within all that, a capacity to stay hopeful. You have a frequency of kindness and love, which is inherently hopeful. And that's inspiring. And I think people are lighting up to hear a refreshing and surprising, in a way, surprising in terms of what is usually heard, a surprising message of another way of being as a nation, a completely other operating system, as you put it. And so let's have a conversation about how the mysteries of the sky at the moment of your birth could somehow be relevant for understanding who you are in this current moment. And so here on the screen, we have Marianne's chart on the left, and on the right, her chart is in the inner wheel. That's the time waves of her birth what the sky looked like at her birth. And on the outer wheel, right at this moment, are just the outer planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. These are the most powerful time waves. And so we want to look at how those powerful time waves are interacting with her natal moment in time. First, let's just try to imagine Houston, Texas on July 8th, 1952, and what the sky looked like as Marianne was coming into the world. She's born under a full moon. The two visible planets are Jupiter right before she was born. If we looked to the east, I don't know, maybe a couple hours before she was born, maybe just an hour, Jupiter would have been coming over the eastern horizon. And as her moment of birth came closer, Jupiter would have been very visible. I don't know the weather conditions, if there was cloudy skies, but if it was a clear night, I imagine in the summertime, well, you get a lot of rain down there. I don't know about Houston, but it's quite possible that Jupiter was beautifully there and enjoyed by those who commune with the morning and evening and daytime skies. Born under a full moon, so that would have been visible all night prior to her birth. And as she was being born, the moon, that full moon, was heading towards the western horizon. So one beautiful light rising, Jupiter, and another moving towards setting. And almost in a what's called a trine. They would have been trine in the earlier hours of the day or the previous day. And so I want to reflect on 2 or 3 major parts of her chart that stand out as unique. Whenever I consider a birth chart, I'm looking for something just very unique about it. What stands out about this moment in time that Marianne's soul was drawn to? We're drawn to a frequency of time as the optimal moment for our soul's development, maturation, and evolution. So I'm looking at what Marianne was attracted to. Her soul was attracted to this unique moment in time. And she's born with this very potent alignment with her sun in Cancer, the sign of nurturing and caring, maternal energy, family energy. Chose that as her sign to be reflecting on throughout her life. As soon as she found out her sun sign, she's reflecting on what's the nature of Cancer and embodying it more and more. And she has, on the one side, Uranus, and on the other side of the sun, Venus, in what's called a triple conjunction. Very precise, all within 5 degrees. So as the sun rose, just an hour after she was born, if you were observing the sunrise, you would be able to imagine right in alignment with your eyes as you look at the sun, Venus and Uranus, behind and in front, perfectly aligned with the horizon, just minutes after she was born, maybe 50 or 60 minutes, probably less. Sun, Venus, Uranus. Venus, of course, is the planet of love, the heart chakra, the force of love and intimacy and pleasure sweetness, kindness. Venus is the friend, the cosmic and ordinary friends. And so it indicates a potential friendliness that's very strong in her. The sun is what one shines with. Just as you would look at that sunrise, it's like the sun is shining the Venus energy right towards the observer. And in a way, Marianne is the observer, receiving those sun rays right as she's being born, and also taking in the Jupiter rays and the moon rays. So she's born under a Venus-Uranus conjunction that's right on the sun. And so we need to reflect on what is a Venus-Uranus conjunction. What is its nature? Uranus is the revolutionary, the freedom-oriented. It has to do with liberation and breakthroughs and being freed from the weight of gravity and the capacity to take flight. And so, if you combine that with Venus, the lover energy, you get a revolutionary of the heart, a love revolutionary, a loving revolutionary, a kind, sweet, loving revolutionary. To the degree that love is healing, so healing when we feel love within ourselves, when we're able to love ourselves and receive love. It is kind and friendly, sweet. And so it is one who wishes to be an agent of change. That's Uranus. To be an agent of change through the heart. And she's really talking about bringing a revolution of the heart to the United States political system. Her 2018 Love America tour, discussing how she believes a revolution in consciousness paves the way to both personal and national renewal. A revolution in consciousness paves the way to both personal and national renewal. And so here we have to bring in the fact that Neptune, the planet of peace and spiritual healing, the awareness that we're all one, comes from the Neptunian frequency. We have to bring in that this Neptunian energy is aligned with this whole triple conjunction. Marianne is born during an outer planet alignment that was dominant during the 1950s. And it started to become really potent in 1952, within 4 degrees. So I think 1952 is the first year where it really kicked in. And so Neptune has to do with spirituality and consciousness and surrender, and it's the flow, the capacity to flow, and it has to do with water and all the qualities of water, the softening, the gentling, the dissolving. The spiritualizing. If you combine that with Uranus, the revolutionary energy, you get the revolution in consciousness that she's referring to. And if you look at her story, she has a story of someone who had a revolution in her own life, a spiritual awakening, to a new way of being through this spiritual text called The Course in Miracles that comes from a higher source. It is a channeled work, and Neptune has to do with channeling. It is that which can dissolve any barriers to higher dimensions, higher spiritual awareness. Neptune dissolves the ego in a sense, the defended ego that is kind of trapped in its programming. Neptune has the capacity to dissolve that. And with the sun representing a whole sense of self, the identity, the ego, someone with Sun Neptune is likely to be able to dissolve the ordinary egoic structures and transcend them, transcend to a higher reality of their own selfhood, like being in touch with the highest frequencies of selfhood, but also being able to transcend the sense of separateness and to feel the oneness and flow with all of humanity and all of the life forms and every being on the planet, and seeing them as all interconnected in a way where the health and well-being of one area is completely relevant and related to the health or illness of any other part of the system. And I'm going to rattle here. So she has both a Venus-Uranus conjunction, the revolutionary of love, the one who brings a revolution through love, through an open heart, the sense that one can have an awakening of the heart, a freeing of the heart, a liberation of one's own capacity to love, to whatever degree that it's blocked and frustrated. Venus-Uranus people who are born especially at the beginning of a cycle of time, as she is. Each year, generally, there's a Venus-Uranus conjunction, the beginning of a new Venus-Uranus cycle of time. It's a new cycle in what's possible in the revolution of the revolutionary nature of love. And so there's a kind of excitement of new possibilities just inherent to this whole alignment, excitement of new possibilities of love, through love, by love. I think we really need to consider her life story and her record of incredible service. Sun Neptune people often have a really strong impulse towards service, selflessness, where there's a letting go of the selfishness and a sense of connection to the whole, and wanting to, from your own awakened state, to be able to share the resources of an open heart with others. And you see this very strongly in Marianne. If you combine it with her Venus-Neptune, she's born towards the end of a Venus-Neptune cycle of time. Towards the new moon, the conjunction phase of Venus-Neptune would have happened a few months later. And so it's a kind of full energy of love, as I would see it. Venus-Neptune is the spiritual love force, and with Uranus, it's the spiritual love force that is revolutionary. It is a change agent. The open heart chakra, when it is given voice and when one has intimacy with it, as we are having with Marianne right now in the major mainstream media and in the debate stage. And I hope it's obvious that I want to see her get to the next debate. And I hope you'll spread the buzz and talk about her record. Just take a look at her Wikipedia. I have no idea if it's accurate or not. There seems to be parts of it that are very skeptical and critical. But if we set them aside and just take a look at the different programs that she has co-founded, like Project Angel Food, which serves 12,000 meals a week to people in need who have major illnesses that make it challenging for them to have the food and nutrition that they need. Project Angel Food has served more than 11 million meals since the organization was born. In the 1980s, she co-founded in New York City and LA the Centers for Living, which served the population of those impacted by HIV and AIDS, both those suffering with the illness and the people around them. This is early on in the 80s that this service was flowing out of her impulse to be a healing presence in the lives of those suffering, both here in the United States, but in the whole world. Her policies are about making sure that every human being has food and clean water and shelter, and inspiring others in that direction, where we all come to realize the basic human right to good food, nutrition, clean water, and a home, and a capacity to work and be a contributor to society. And then, what else do I want to say? Her advocacy for women. I mean, we can see that in the strong Venus, that impulse of the lover and the shining feminine energy and the connection to it. She also has a very strong moon placement. The moon is opposite Venus, where you often see a very strong love for women and for children, as she has. So the full moon is on Venus. It's not just the sun that's on Venus and Uranus. It's the full moon. And so that's a kind of really radiant, young type of love, an active, shining love force. And with the moon Venus, it's a more tender-hearted, sweet, maternal impulse that especially wishes to be of service to women and children, and her impulse to be protective of those populations, I think we can see in the moon-Venus opposition. The moon is moving into a square also, which you often see in the charts of advocates, those who are fighting for that which they care for, and also particularly fighting on behalf of women and children, and the feminine generally. And so, to me, this is the chart of someone who has the potential to have a wide open heart chakra that is radiant, shining, a shining presence of what a spiritual love force, a revolutionary spiritual love force can look like. And so there's the Sun-Venus conjunction, just that on its own that's a kind of identity with the force of love, an identification with the force of love, feeling that you are a lover, sometimes also an artist or a musician. Her initial impulse to be a cabaret performer, I believe singer. I love that. If we get to have a cabaret singer in the Oval Office, how amazing would that be? Wow. That would be perfect it would be exactly what the universe would do to balance out what's going on now. It's inevitable this darkness will swing towards the light. Her sun Neptune square is the spiritual light, the brightness and brilliance of the sun with the sacred shining through it, the sacred, brilliant, spiritual light. And so often people with sun Neptune can be very charismatic. You sometimes see it in the charts of actors and actresses, that capacity to kind of flow into a character. And so there can be a kind of charismatic capacity to embody a very brilliant personality, especially with Uranus also there. Sun Uranus can be very brilliant and charismatic. And you see it in people who identify as change agents. And they often have lives with unexpected awakenings, unexpected shifts, plot twists. I mean, she has a very interesting story. I think we need to be sure to mention this Saturn-Neptune conjunction and how Saturn has to do with maturity and wisdom and strength. Neptune, again, spiritual, the sacred, the divine, the impulse of the human psyche towards the divine. And so you put them together and you get this kind of very serious spirituality. Like, it also has to do, Saturn has to do with the material world, this domain of matter and pragmatism, the pragmatic realities of this dimension, the experience of the human body in this dimension. The earth realm, Neptune, the transcendent realm. And so it has a lot to do with bridging heaven and earth. The way she wants to bring a very high frequency spiritual values into a very pragmatic restructuring of the American system. And I feel I need to read a couple of quotes now from Marianne. And I'm going to pause and hydrate, and I will be right back. Okay, so this is a quote from Marianne from her Instagram page. And this is, I think it might be from today, where she is talking about how she's proposed a U.S. Department of Peace to harness the powers of conflict resolution, restorative justice, violence prevention, trauma-informed education, mindfulness in the schools, plus national conferences and a presidential task force on peace building and peace creation. It's time to transform our society on such a deep level that peace becomes a way of life, expressed not only in our personal behavior, but in our public policy as well. Join me and we can make this happen. From our environmental and food policies to educational and economic policies to military and health policies, we can and must proactively wage peace. Marianne2020.com. End quote. I think I forgot to say the quote at the beginning, but I think it was obvious. Neptune has to do with peace. And if you combine that with the love force of Venus, the revolutionary change force of Uranus, and then you put the sun there and her whole selfhood is shining and radiating that potential to live in peace, to live from an open heart chakra, and from that place, change society. And here, I think we need to, I hope it's obvious there, the kind of spiritual maturity of that vision. To hear someone saying these things with such clarity and really a kind of gravitas, a maturity, and her Saturn, Neptune, is the cycle of time that relates to the spiritual maturation process. and how we as individuals in each lifetime go on a journey through time where there's a potential to mature on a consciousness level, on a spiritual level, on the spiritual path. We're all on a spiritual path, but we can be conscious about it. And when we are, we just tap into the natural, maturational, spiritual force. And generally, as time passes, decade after decade, and as we move from our 30s to 40s to 50s, each decade has the potential for another level of maturity. And here is an elder, Marianne Williamson, speaking from a grounded, very well integrated, serious spiritual voice. It is very refreshing and new, and I don't think we've heard this particular voice on a national stage in this way before. I may be mistaken. I'm sure there are other independent candidates that I'm not aware of. But this is a refreshing new voice of now, and that's why it's why people are electrified by it, and people are doing huge numbers of Google searches about her to understand who she is and what her message is. And so, and it's also true that Saturn Neptune is very service oriented, and particularly it seems to be of service to those with illness. And often you see it in people who are trying to bridge heaven and earth, to bring down the spiritual compassion force of heaven and institute it on the structural level that Saturn represents. Okay, I want to shift to perhaps the last part of her chart before we take a look at her transits, which are striking. She's born with a very strong Mercury. She's published many best-selling books, and she has a powerful voice, a compelling voice, and this is very impressive. Her capacity for public speaking has been forged over decades now. We need someone in the Oval Office with her capacity for clear communication, clear, compelling, strong communication. The fact that she has relatively less direct political experience as an elected official, I think really works in her favor and feels like a kind of natural balancing of our current president. Two outsiders coming from a life perspective that has not been beaten down by day-to-day engagement with the bureaucratic, hierarchical, controlled political system. To come out from the outside and shake things up, I think, again, this has something to do with Marianne's very strong Uranus, the change agent, the surprising new voice. But I think we can look at her Mercury, her very potent Mercury alignment. She's born right at the beginning of the Mercury-Pluto cycle of time. Mercury being communication, the mind, the voice. Pluto being deep, powerful, compelling, evolutionary, transformational. A powerful, compelling voice, a powerful, compelling communicator, author, teacher, speaker. I think Mercury-Pluto has something to do with all of our capacity to evolve the power of our capacity to communicate. We can all grow in the communication capacity. And as we cooperate with that process, we can be more and more powerful in our communication ability. And I think Marianne carries that very strongly in her. And I don't know her story of the recent years as well as I have a sense for her earlier career, but I would be very curious to hear her talk about how her capacity to communicate powerfully has evolved and transformed, and has she had the experience of finding a deeper and deeper authentic voice that she communicates from. I see that in her in the recent interviews that she's had. And the power of her capacity with words to clearly and compellingly give voice to her open heart, to her loving voice, the love force that she carries. I think that means I need a rattle. I'm going to pause in a moment. But her Mercury-Pluto is square to Jupiter. That just makes it bigger. Jupiter makes things grander and also potentially more successful. Jupiter elevates things. And in this case, it elevates the power of her voice to communicate on a global scale, certainly a national scale, but that she could ultimately be a very powerful communicator on the international stage as a president needs to be. This is indicative of someone who very well might be involved in transnational geopolitics on the highest level. I mean, I am envisioning her at G8 conferences and giving voice to this perspective that she is offering us. How awesome would that be? How new and refreshing would that be to have a empowered presidential person like Marianne in those situations where she can give voice to the compassion force that she naturally embodies. Now, this Mercury is also square Mars. There's a warrior communicator, a warrior with Jupiter of higher moral values, higher moral principles, fighting for higher moral principles with a powerful voice. This is someone that can debate well, that is likely to continue to really strongly communicate this perspective. And this is what I hope, that she'll be given the opportunity to be up on that debate stage at least one more time. And it seems like what we need most is to spread the buzz so that the polling goes up to 2%. And I think it's going to happen, but it has to happen fast. We just have a few weeks. And so also she needs some more people to donate to her campaign. That seems less urgent. It seems like that's going to be no problem, but you got to spread the buzz. You got to understand who she is. You got to learn about her life and then talk to other people about it. And she's asking people to make YouTube videos, and here I am doing that. And you can find your way of, if you have social media that you are able to utilize to support people that you care about, I think this is the time to do that. And I think if enough people do that, there's going to be a buzz that takes off. And so I'm going to pause now before discussing her transits. And so I hope this has been helpful for understanding in a deep way the potential and amazingness of Marianne Williamson. Blessings until I return.